Hi, everyone. I'm Maggie McGrath, senior editor at Forbes. Hurricane Melissa continued strengthening on Tuesday morning, and this Category 5 storm is now in the top 3 strongest storms ever to hit the Atlantic. It stands to cause catastrophic damage to Jamaica and Cuba. Joining us now to talk about the storm and its trajectory is Alex DaSilva, AccuWeather's lead hurricane forecaster. Alex, thanks so much for joining us. Let's start with where the storm is now. Has it made landfall in Jamaica?
Well, this is certainly a very sobering sight here. If we take a look here at the satellite, we are mere a few hours away from landfall of this massive Category 5 hurricane in southwestern Jamaica right now. This is now in the top 3 strongest of all time in the Atlantic Basin right now, getting very, very close to southwestern Jamaica. The hurricane hunters are finding that the storm is intensifying upon landfall. So this is the strongest the storm has been in its entire lifetime, and it's possible that it could even make a run for the top 2 or even the top hurricane on record for the Atlantic Basin in terms of intensity. So a very, very dangerous storm, and all residents in Jamaica need to be in their safe space now, as conditions are going to be going downhill very, very quickly.
Let's talk about those conditions. What are the wind speeds right now, and do they stand to increase?
Yeah, the wind speeds right now are about 185 miles per hour right now, and that's maximum sustained winds. That puts it number 2 on the all-time list for wind speed. The all-time leader was 190 miles an hour. So we're in the Atlantic Basin, that is. So we're only about 5 miles an hour away from tying the all-time record. We've seen many storms actually get to 185. So there's like 4 or 5 storms, I think, that are tied for the second all-time. So this storm just joined that elusive company right now. So again, we expect big time winds to be coming across Jamaica here today. We have an AccuWeather local storm max of 180 miles per hour on land. So again, a lot of these winds are going to be sweeping across land during the day today and causing devastation as they sweep inland over the coastline later today.
Now, when we talk about a Category 5 storm, it is dangerous, full stop. But as you look at the rainfall, as you look at the wind, as you look at the storm surge, are one of those 3 factors more dangerous than another? What do residents of Jamaica have to be most on guard for right now?
Yeah, unfortunately, it looks like all the factors are going to be very dangerous with this Category 5 hurricane. We can start with the surge here. A surge is something you always expect with these very powerful hurricanes. So we're expecting a surge down here of at least 10 to 15 feet. We now have an AccuWeather local storm max of 18 feet above normally dry ground. So if you go to the beach, you stick your toes into the sand, just imagine 18 feet up and then straight inland. That's the kind of flooding that we could potentially be seeing right near where that eye makes landfall. But even in very populated areas like Kingston, the capital, we could still be seeing a deadly storm surge of 6 to 10 feet. And Kingston lies very low to the water. There's some areas that are very, very low, very close to sea level. So that's why we're very concerned that even though Kingston is a little bit east of where this center of the storm will be, they're still expecting a very dangerous storm surge with this storm. But we also, of course, we talked about the wind, wind gusts, 150, 160, 170, 180 miles an hour potentially coming onto land. We also have the rainfall, and this is what I'm really, really concerned about because we're going to be seeing just unbelievable amounts of rain. We're going to be measuring the rain, I think, in feet and not in inches here. We've already seen a lot of devastating mudslides in portions of Hispaniola, and now we're starting to see that happen in Jamaica here, where we could see 24 to 36 inches of rain in Kingston. That's the capital. The storm's going to be west of them, or at least the center of circulation, but we're talking about a long duration event. It's already been raining in there for over a day now. And now we're just going to be piling on more and more rain from here. We're talking about major mudslides, widespread across the island expected here. These mountains act like sponges to squeeze that moisture out. The air hits the mountains, it goes up, and then it condenses out. and it acts like a sponge. It's just like, imagine you taking a soaked sponge and just squeezing out all the water from that sponge. That's what we're going to be dealing with here. There's mountains well over 5,000 feet here in Jamaica. And so that is the concern, that those mountains are really going to squeeze out a lot of that moisture and cause a lot of those problems. So it's multifaceted. We're going to have the surge for the folks at the coast, and then, of course, the wind damage coming inland. And then if you miss out on most of the wind, you still have the flooding. So a very, very dangerous, multi-pronged event coming up here.
Now, when we spoke last week, this storm had been disorganized. In your words, it was moving slowly. Has it picked up speed? Is there any hope that it could clear Jamaica faster than it seemed a day or two ago?
It is picking up a little bit of speed. A couple days ago, it was basically stationary. I mean, you could crawl faster than what the storm was essentially moving at. But now the storm is starting to move at a little bit of a higher pace, 7, 8, 9 miles an hour, somewhere in there. So luckily, it is starting to speed up a little bit, but that is still rather slow for a tropical system. So we still do expect a slow movement here over the next day or so. It will gradually be accelerating as it moves to the north, but still a very, very slow tropical system and very prolonged event and impacts as well.
Prolonged event and impact. So we've been talking about Jamaica, but where else could people feel the most severe effects? I mentioned Cuba at the top of the conversation. You mentioned Hispaniola. Can you take us through the other areas that could be experiencing damage?
Yeah, of course. Hispaniola still dealing with the rain. If I switch back here to the satellite, you can still see some of these outer bands here getting into portions of Haiti here. So we're still dealing with some flooding issues, even as the storm makes landfall way west over here, still seeing those impacts further to the east. And then where's the storm going from here? Well, 3 a.m. Wednesday is what we expect the landfall time to be in eastern Cuba. That's where it's coming up next. So that'll be early tomorrow morning, expecting a major hurricane landfall in eastern Cuba. Probably going to lose some wind intensity as the storm moves over land. So we do expect it to weaken a little bit, or at least lose that wind intensity. But we're still very concerned about the flooding aspect of things. That is not going to change. So even though the winds might come down a little bit, we are still very, very concerned about those flooding potentials in eastern Cuba. And those mountains in eastern Cuba are very, very tall as well. So just think of that sponge analogy I gave. We're still going to have that tomorrow as the storm comes over Cuba. And then from there, it comes up into the Bahamas and Turks and Caicos. So those folks will have to watch out for it as well. So again, even though we're forecasting a Category 2 at that point, the rain and surge are still going to be a major, major issue.
Category 2 by the time it reaches Bahamas, Turks and Caicos. What day should the residents of those places be prepared for landfall?
Yeah, so we'll kind of go through it here. So for Jamaica, it's right now. If you're not in your safe space, you need to get there right now. The storm is going to be making landfall shortly. For Cuba, I mean, conditions are going to start to go downhill later today pretty significantly. So you probably only have a few hours left of preparation ahead of the storm. And then the Bahamas, you have probably until maybe tomorrow morning or tonight to get prepared for this. Again, the storm is going to be accelerating a little bit, so it's going to come up on you quick here going into tomorrow. And then from there, the storm is just going to accelerate out into the Atlantic away from the United States. It's all being driven here by a dip in the jet stream that's going to kick the storm out. So we're not going to deal with any direct impacts on the United States, but I'm still very concerned that we could see some very dangerous rip currents starting later this week and into the weekend. So if anybody in the United States is going to be venturing out to the beaches, please bear in mind that the conditions at the beach could be very dangerous.
Conditions at the beach, dangerous in the U.S. We're using a lot of superlatives and strong language in this conversation, and I want to go back to the strength of this storm. There was a statistic I saw earlier today that said this storm is now more severe than Hurricane Katrina. Is that true?
It is in terms of wind speed and in terms of atmospheric pressure. So we can take a look here at the strongest Caribbean hurricanes on record in the modern era. And honestly, we can just say strongest hurricanes on record because now Melissa is number 3 all time for the strongest hurricane on record in the Atlantic Basin. We had this 896 pressure, but that has since come down several millibars from there. So that now puts the storm tied with the Labor Day hurricane, which is not listed on here because it was not a Caribbean hurricane, but it's now tied for the third strongest on record for atmospheric pressure, and the second strongest on record, tied for wind speed. And it's possible here that it could catch Gilbert, who's number 2 on the all-time list. I think it would be really hard to catch Wilma before the storm makes landfall, but it is possible that the storm could get to number 2 on the pressure list all-time in the tropical Atlantic.
Now, there's one area where it might not be in the top 3. Can you talk about the diameter and the size? Is this hurricane as large as it could be?
Yeah, that's a good question, because size does matter when it comes to these tropical systems for surge and for the wind field, of course, as well. So if we take a look at the storm here, we zoom out here, you can see, I mean, it is still a fairly large storm, but it is maybe average or maybe even a little below average in terms of very powerful hurricane size of the storm. You know, some of the largest storms I remember seeing, Hurricane Ike in the tropical or in the Gulf here, it almost took up the entire Gulf. It was so large before going into Texas. So while this storm is very powerful, it isn't as large as some of the other hurricanes. We think about hurricanes like Hurricane Andrew that hit Florida in 1992. That storm was relatively small in size, but it was small and mighty. It was a Category 5 at landfall, but that wind field was a little bit smaller during Hurricane Andrew. So this is a similar situation where the wind field is compact. Those really strong winds are going to be right at the center of circulation, or right around that eye, right in that eye wall. And then once you get away from that, the winds are going to considerably come down, but we still do expect hurricane force wind gusts across the entire island of Jamaica.
When you look at the wind speed, the rain, the pressure for Hurricane Melissa, Alex, what caused all of that? Because again, when we spoke last week, it was a bit of a disorganized storm. Is the fact that it was disorganized and then consolidated a factor in the strength, or does it have something to do with the overall environment in summer and fall 2025? Can you attribute a cause to this hurricane?
A lot of it has to do with the water temperatures. We've been saying it all season long that the water temperatures in the Caribbean were exceptionally warm. You know, those water temperatures were in the mid to upper 80s. You typically need about 80 degrees Fahrenheit or so for tropical development. We're talking about those water temperatures 6-8 degrees above that threshold. So a lot of warm water and deep warm water. We call that ocean heat content, how deep into the ocean that warm water extends down. And this area here, Central Caribbean, Western Caribbean, that's where the ocean heat content is the highest across the entire basin. And in fact, the ocean heat content in the Caribbean was the 3rd highest all time, only behind the last 2 years. So very warm water, very deep warm water, and limited wind shear. So hostile winds will rip storms apart. That's actually what this storm was dealing with early in its life. It was really struggling to get organized because we had a lot of winds hitting it from the northwest like that. It was kind of blowing all the thunderstorms to the east. That wind has subsided or has pushed to the north. And so the storm has basically had a near perfect environment. Warm water, deep warm water, low wind shear. That's what caused this storm to explode.
We've covered a lot of ground, Alex. Is there anything else you and your AccuWeather team want our Forbes audience to understand about Hurricane Melissa?
Yeah, again, this is a very dangerous storm. There's going to be catastrophic damage across Jamaica here. We urge people to get in their safe shelter right now. You need to shelter as if this is a tornado, especially if you're right in the near where the center is going to be moving. You need to shelter like it's a tornado. Get to an interior room away from the windows because this is going to come through, and there's going to be a lot of flying debris around that could come through windows. We want people to get away from windows. There could be shards of debris coming through those windows, and we want people to stay safe. This is going to be coastline altering, likely, and we're likely going to see impacts from this that last months and years, unfortunately, into the future. This is going to be a very devastating impact here across Jamaica.
Our thoughts are with everyone in Jamaica. Stay safe for those watching. Alex DaSilva, lead hurricane forecaster at AccuWeather, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.